All right, so attribution. Um, Generally, measuring marketing effectiveness and attribution is a pretty critical topic for all of us. We all want to show value through our work and make decisions based on solid data. But if you're like me and have gone through a variety of articles to get an understanding of how you can start on your attribution journey, you've noticed that oftentimes some of the foundational information may be missing from there. So what happens when our tools and models end up becoming more roadblocks as they're not as aligned with our needs and the perspective of our business rather than stepping stones? So what I would like us to go through today is more around the foundational information that is required as you're starting your attribution journey, and focus on the strategic outcomes as well as a few key steps that each of you can take as you're running your systems for an attribution journey. I am Madalina Bogden. I'm heading delivery services for professional services for a marketing technology consultancy. And we have been working, as well as in my prior career, both in-house, have been working on a variety of solutions, have been seeing the different business needs and that everyone may have as they go on this journey, and would like to share a little bit of that experience with you today. I do firmly believe that the best way for us as marketers to lead and drive change as well as enhance our influence both within our organizations as well as within our careers is ultimately data. So as a marketer, how can you leverage that data to create a real impact and at the same time shine like a superstar? Kicking things off a little with some reporting data fun facts, and more specifically the role of a marketer. Marketing, as we all know, used to be a cost center. Right up until we learned to speak a little bit the language of finance, put some ROIs into our PowerPoints. And now they let us into budget meetings, at least sometimes. But the first fun fact that I wanted to share is that if you boil it down, marketers generally only do two things. First things first, they generate leads, and then they nurture those through the journey up until a purchase, and why not a repurchase. The second one is that ultimately your executive team, your leaders, your CMO, they're only going to pay attention to your marketing efforts and activities once you start presenting things from a profit and loss perspective, because they care about dollars and cents. So as you're thinking about reporting and measurement, you're going to have to seriously think about tying those initiatives to profit and loss, as well as key business metrics in order to be able to get their attention. And the third one is how we as marketers ultimately can influence that profit and loss or any other company level measurements. That is going to typically be either through generating more revenue, more pipeline, or influencing profit and loss through strategic processes, people, as well as technology, and trying to make some savings on those fronts. Now, continuing around setting the stage around the importance of measurement and reporting, enterprise level reporting ultimately dramatically impacts your business. It helps us have an improved decision making and influences the marketing strategy. Goes into increasing our operational efficiency, as well as support a better campaign tracking and channel performance measurement. Based on some of the data that we compiled from Gartner, McKinsey, and the CMO Council, we can see that a large number of marketers do place reporting and data at the forefront of their decision making. Their ability to see increased efficiency within their marketing processes by adopting more marketing reporting and generally tracking their campaign performance. So as we can see, tracking is ultimately critical for marketing and ops leaders, as it helps us develop strong strategies and showcase marketing's impact on deal flow and pipeline. Now, I think I did something, as my slide doesn't change, but I can probably do it from here. All right, problem solved. So, a key part of measuring marketing contribution and performance is ultimately attribution, which brings us to the core of our topic today. However, oftentimes what we're seeing is that finding the right framework and tools for your businesses can potentially be challenging. Before we move forward, just as a quick check, how many of you are in B2B versus B2C? If you can raise your hands for B2B. All right, it's quite an overwhelming audience. As we all know, marketing attribution originated in B2C initially. However, as it got more adopted in B2B, it definitely became more challenging and has different complexities associated with it. First, I would like us to discuss some definitions, as we hear a lot about marketing attribution, pipeline attribution, revenue attribution. Ever run a campaign and felt that suddenly every channel is claiming the success for that? Well, from that perspective, oftentimes I feel that marketing attribution is like watching 5 kids all fighting over who made the dog sit. Marketing attribution, at its core, it is about evaluating the consumer touch points that supported the path towards a purchase, and ultimately measuring the campaign and channel engagement and conversion rates. Now, as we talk about pipeline attribution takes marketing attribution one step further to ultimately tie those opportunities to pipeline generated by marketing activities. And last but not least, the revenue attribution portion is going to connect those marketing activities to the closed revenue. So ultimately, we can report on our ROI. So as we look at attribution, we can see that it brings a lot of value in helping us understand what we should continue doing versus what we should stop. Which are those firms, for example, that haven't been generating any leads for quite a while and may need to be sunset? What are some of the campaigns that ultimately need to be shut down? How can we ultimately know where we can make another investment in order to amplify our impact within that particular channel? And ultimately, how can we make the most out of our budget and reduce the waste? These are all areas where attribution comes into play. And there are definitely more examples that we can add here. And it's important to keep in mind that attribution can help solve those challenges, as well as provide the data that you need to answer the critical questions that your leaders may be asking of you and help you be more prepared as part of your next reporting meetings. However, if you're ready to start, or you've already started investing in marketing attribution and revenue accountability, and started going on that path, you may have noticed that most articles out there really revolve around telling you, hey, go ahead and purchase an attribution solution. Then there's some filler content, and then it dives straight into attribution tools. What it's missing there is really building up that foundational knowledge that you need in order to be successful in your attribution journey. Talking about attribution models before establishing a solid foundation oftentimes feels like thinking about what color to paint your car before even purchasing a vehicle. So my goal, as we dive deeper, is to help bridge some of that gap and help you understand where you can start to structure your marketing department and your systems for ensuring attribution success. Attribution typically best measures active, targeted initiatives. Think here around campaigns, events, paid media, for example. So mostly one-to-one interactions and one-to-one activities. A person that may have received a direct email or may have filled out a form, chatted with you at an event. However, that's not the whole story. We all know that there are also those additional cumulative activities that may come into play, such as word of mouth, branding, PR, which don't have such a straightforward attribution process, as they're not directly attributable to a campaign. However, those are vital and should also be measured themselves as well. Often we do that through market research, surveys, for example. So my main takeaway from this is that attribution can measure everything, and that is absolutely okay, because our goal there would be to ensure that we measure those broader impacts in a way that makes sense for us and our businesses, and integrate those insights into our overall strategies. Another reality about attribution, and I see that the font went a little bit off on this one, but sometimes marketing attribution numbers may be telling a conflicting story, depending on the perspective that we look from. The demand gen team may initially look primarily from the perspective of a first touch attribution to the exclusion of any other data, while for journey, nurture, CS teams, the multi-touch might be the one that they typically look for. And when we look from an attribution tools perspective, oftentimes they tend to force marketers to figure out which model works best for them, but at the same time, missing on the key differentiators between different businesses. First touch attribution typically says that awareness matters the most, while last touch views attribution from the perspective of close is king. And multi-touch is about why not give everyone a trophy and the credit. So it often feels like almost like a kindergarten graduation from that perspective. One of our clients, and kind of like to show where this challenge impacts us and the importance of keeping in mind that predefined models may not necessarily be the solution. One of our clients held an event to promote a certain product. Let's call it Product X. And within that conference, if a conversation was started about Product X, marketing would have been given the credit. Otherwise, no. However, what happens in the situation where you have a prospect attending the conference and starts a conversation or later visits your website about product Y or Z? In that case, our client's marketing team didn't receive the credit. It got attributed to sales or another department. However, the initial source was obviously the event, which was funded through the marketing budget. So marketing not receiving any credit isn't the solution. Giving marketing all the credit is not a solution either. So these are the examples of situations when marketing can't fully rely on a one-size-fits-most type of solution when it comes to attribution models. Instead, you need to be able to calculate and configure attribution that is tracked from a variety of angles, and most importantly, adapt to your preferences and the parameters rather than taking a broad brush approach to measuring marketing performance. Another reality of attribution is that as marketers, we also need to accept the fact that we'll not capture every attributions. Marketers need to be more realistic about what attribution technology can do for us, but also understand its limitations. Because as we all know it, when human behavior gets involved, even the best laid out plans and journeys may not necessarily go as we envisioned them. People ultimately will do all sorts of things that will go against the planned conversion path and not line up with every behavior that we think someone would be doing. And that's perfectly normal. Think here of, I believe, never in the history of the forward to a friend button in an email, anyone has actually clicked the button in order to forward that email. They pretty much probably just hit forward and send it that way, regardless of how colorful we might have made that button, how much we would have tried to grab their attention. Similarly, we also can't account for someone mentioning our product in a water cooler conversation in the office, and then the other person going to our website to check us out. So with that in mind, we need to accept the fact that we should be aiming to understand about 80% of what drove engagement within and participation within a digital campaign, and use that information in order to drive our insights and the strategic direction, our investments moving from there. Another reality of attribution is that attribution is ultimately about trends and understanding behaviors over time, not necessarily direct one-to-one lead gen. We're not going to get the full picture, but it should be enough so we can feel confident about our contributions to performance and also making data-driven decisions without having to split hairs. My team has been working with this client a few years back who was absolutely obsessed about those daily new lead numbers, and most particularly those 1 or 2 records that may have come in without a lead source out of thousands. In those cases, our team was ultimately being forced to waste time and energy trying to look down why those random 2 records didn't have a lead source associated, at the expense of actually spending the time to understand what drove new leads and how we can maximize those sources. And this is a common trap, leaning too hard on the reporting data in order to show the marketing contribution to revenue can ultimately backfire. If we end up spending more time defending our data than using that data to make strategic recommendations and influence our strategy. We need, as marketers as well, to look at attribution through the lenses of the fact that it's ultimately an art and science. And the purpose of that data is to help us tell the story of the marketing's performance, marketing's contributions, but still allow us to ultimately control the narrative. What is the perspective that we want to present that data? What is our goal ultimately? And very importantly as well, blending our day-to-day, blending that data with our day-to-day gut checks and our experience and instincts. Last reality of attribution is one of the most important ones in terms of requirements, because we do ultimately need to have the data that we need in order to facilitate reporting on marketing effectiveness. Have you ever noticed how every time something goes wrong, sales tends to blame marketing, marketing blames ops, and ops just blames the data because there's nothing going further from there? Well, as we can see, 75% of marketing leaders do need better data for marketing attribution. And this is one of the biggest requirements, as oftentimes data challenges fundamentally limit performance and reporting. So it is important that you ensure that you have clean data, accurate and reliable, as well as your systems communicate effectively with each other. Within this particular report, marketers have particularly mentioned disconnected sources as well as the data tech debt being their largest challenges. I'm just wondering for you, what are some of the more typical data challenges? If someone would like to volunteer and share from what are you experiencing? Does anyone want to volunteer?
I'd say previously using, coming from an organization that has an SDR function, pre-sales, account manager, so on and so forth, they each have their own tool. So SDRs would use outreach, Salesforce, the account management team, whatever CS team uses, those guys.
Yeah.
And they would each have their own attribution points and data points they refer to, and they didn't always agree. So when I'm trying to get sort of a single picture as a sales operations person reporting up into management, I don't have a clear picture because everyone's kind of competing. So in the end, we tried using Power BI as like a singular.
And stitch the data back together.
But even then, kind of, as you spoke about here, all right, the SDRs made the conversation and booked a demo 6 months ago. They then met the account manager at an event, and then so on and so forth. So it's just, that's kind of the issue we have.
Yeah. No.
What's the question? Can you repeat the question?
So my question was just in addition to this ones, what other challenges have you experienced? If there was anything else that you would like to add? And that was a really great example as well. And we're going to speak a little bit as we're diving deeper into some of the key steps around some of the requirements to ensure that we get better alignment across teams, across systems as well, in order to avoid the need to stitch the data back together after the fact as well. So great answer. Thank you so much. All right. So diving right in, the next section of today's discussion is really diving into those steps around how we can plan for attribution success. Because as we can see, based on the realities around attribution, it is a valuable tool for measuring campaign effectiveness, but it's not ultimately without limitations. Attribution can't solve everything, but it may just solve that meeting where 5 teams take credit for one particular closed deal. Marketers do have to set realistic expectations and use attribution in conjunction with other methods in order to gain a more comprehensive understanding of the impact of your marketing efforts and activities. By doing so, you can ultimately make better informed decisions, have real, more measurable impact, and optimize your strategies for long-term success. Setting expectations is essential, but we also need to rethink what we need attribution to do for us. In order to show that, we obviously need to start by determining what our goals are and what our business goals are in the first place. So the first step in setting yourself up for success and your systems up for success in terms of getting ready for marketing attribution is about achieving achievable marketing campaign goals, because winging it isn't a strategy. At the Demand Lab, we typically work with our clients to ensure that we establish measurable expectations. And this is central to all the projects that we develop together, as it reduces some of the communication back and forth. So we typically tend to frame every request within the following statement. As an owner, I want to request a new feature, and I will measure its success by a specific measure. For example, as a marketer, I want to measure abandoned widget requests to increase widget completion via a product usage campaign. I want to show our email nurture improved 15% of the leaks within that particular funnel. So you see how we basically track the owner, request, feature, and then the KPI as well as the measure. In order to get to that stage, there is a series of questions that we would like to ask. So starting first is who is requesting the campaign? Who is ultimately the owner? As this helps us establish responsibilities and accountability as well. The next one is around what is the requested campaign? It may sound straightforward, but it does require collaborating with those stakeholders who requested the campaign initially, and making sure that we are aligning on the specific goal, the why behind that campaign, and oftentimes asking this question early on and diving deeper into additional questions that may come up is going to really reduce that back and forth as we're executing on it and help us ensure that we're moving into the right direction. The next one may sound pretty straightforward. This is around what is the goal of the campaign. What specifically we would like to achieve through it, whether that is increasing our MQL targets. Through that is like going back to the widget. We want to see an 15% improvement in our leaks within that funnel. What is that specific goal that we would like to achieve? And then how does that relate ultimately to the business goals? Because if we go back to the example of we want to see a higher number of MQLs, or we want our brand to be top of mind, those type of initiatives are not going to be solely marketing's responsibility. They are going to require a collaboration with the sales department, your product team, in order to achieve those. So it's important we understand how our goals relate within the larger business context. And last but not least, as we answered all of this, diving into how will we measure our success for this particular campaign. And really at this point, establishing, as we understand what it is the request, the how and why behind it, how we will determine at the end whether this campaign was successful or not. And it's really important we define this step as well as the reporting that we are going to need to have in place before we even start executing on that campaign. Otherwise, completing and defining that reporting and measurement after the fact, it's really going to be almost like trying to stuff blueberries into a muffin after it actually has been baked. It's obviously going to come with a lot of challenges, and it's going to get messy as well. The next one is once we have our clear goal and we've defined how that looks like, it's important to also start thinking about setting up a customer journey for ensuring that we have the most accurate data. A customer journey or lead lifecycle is a mile marker type of tool, a measuring and reporting tool that helps us understand the velocity of a record as it moves through the company's interactions, from prospect to customer as well as beyond. We're there at every touch point, almost as the clean AX of customer journey. But customer journey really provide a clear and commonly shared understanding of how prospects move through the funnel as well as beyond, and helps speed up our attribution preparedness. Now, as you're diving on the customer journey, it is also important to keep in mind that the system is only going to listen and react to the marketing, sales, and customer success practices that you already have in place within your organization. Oftentimes in consulting, we view customer journeys or lead lifecycle to be only half probably of the work that we do for a client, because as soon as we're going to develop that lifecycle and let it go live and roam free in the system, it is going to expose any non-standard practices that you have, as well as unexpected behaviors that weren't and couldn't have been thought of in the first place. Another aspect as part of your attribution journey that it's important to start thinking about before diving into that is really, and for any form of measurement at the end of the day, is really ensuring that you have a clear single view of a record and set up your data in such a way so you have a clear way of understanding who an individual is. This may sound straightforward, but we often see this being one of the major challenges and considerations for businesses. Because after all, if you do, generally up until, let's say, a 10-12% duplicate rate within your system, we can say that may potentially be slightly acceptable. Anything beyond that is absolutely going to impact your lifecycle, lead scoring, as well as, especially nowadays, as we're discussing and thinking so much about personalization at scale, well, we can't really do personalization at scale if we don't have a single view of a record and we have a lot of duplicates in the system. As it can be very difficult to see which version of a record ultimately receives an email, fills out a form, or visits your website. Our internal processes are going to have a hard time scoring and moving through a funnel those records as well. One way I like to think about disjointed data is almost like a CRM personality disorder. Taking just in case as an example, in one system, just in case may be a VP in the US. In another instance, Justin might actually be a student. And then another record may have unsubscribed 3 years ago, but for some reason it's still receiving emails. So as we can see, it also brings up potential compliance issues as well. The main takeaway is that in this type of cases, the activity of what someone ultimately participated in gets diluted across several records. So whenever you would like to embrace attribution data, one of the first things to look at is to ensure that you have a way to distill who an individual is for your business and be able to measure their behaviors. Now, there might be cases where companies, especially in the enterprise world, may be looking for a variety of reasons at having intentional duplicates. It's still important in those cases, as you're making those decisions, to think through what correlation of data or combination of data is ultimately going to define that single view for you. Whether that might be name plus email address. But having a common convention, which ultimately still allows you to have the record of truth. Another important aspect, especially as you're developing a customer journey, involves ensuring data standardization, as this helps technical processes know what data points are the same, so it can correlate them together. Data hygiene, which is around standardizing the way we write customer data for things like firmographics, demographics, as well as activities, is ultimately crucial to marketing. For instance, let's think about the marketing campaign name. That name will often serve as a common denominator or a key, if you would like to dig through it that way, across all your platforms to understand the campaign performance and attribution. So going to the example that was shared before, within Outreach, within our CRM, we do need to ensure that we have that common campaign name and key in order to be able to correlate all those touch points together and understand that they are referring to a similar campaign. And you'll want to ensure that you define standardized naming conventions that do work across all your platforms and can be, very importantly, can be easily understood and adopted by anyone affected by that campaign data. On a practical level, you get to this by getting an organizational buy-in on how you talk about campaigns, and then also creating naming conventions that are going to scale across all aspects of a campaign, as well as a system, whether we're looking at your social media, CRM, what you're going to track within your UTM parameters, how your analytics platform is going to capture that. On the same vein of consistency and standardization, this last part may seem a little silly, but it truly is one of the biggest hurdles that we see when we are talking with marketing departments. If you want to measure something consistently, you must give yourself a standard way to do that. A common problem can occur, especially when we have multiple people work within a platform, like HubSpot, for example, as without that level of standardization and consistency, there may be different ways of executing a campaign or that email, that landing page that you want to roll out, which may cause problems down the line. Some examples here include, like, for example, missing your analytics tracking parameters on email clicks. Those may be incorrectly set up or missing altogether. The landing page may be missing, for example, some web tracking associated, or the form doesn't properly capture your analytics values. Another example would be around the names and IDs of your campaigns may not be consistent across all platforms and systems and differ across those. How we can tackle this ultimately is by foolproofing our campaign setup and measurement and looking at establishing common, consistent processes. Because even if any of this may not necessarily prevent us from rolling out that campaign, the email is still going to go out, even if we may be missing or having incorrect parameters set up. However, our ability to report and measure on the effectiveness of that email is going to be skewed later on. So some of the things that we can do in this sense are looking at deploying a marketing campaign QA checklist to ensure that we ensure that consistency and standardized process. If we notice, especially if you're in ops, if you notice that your marketers may be consistently missing certain items, trying to understand where that is coming, running some additional best practices type of training, but also having conversations with them, understanding what is working, what is not. Maybe a process needs to be changed. Maybe a certain part of the process may be too complex and it might require to be simplified. Because at the end of the day, your goal is to ensure that consistency across the team. And as we discussed around the naming standard, the best naming standard is ultimately the one that everyone will use. And last but not least, consider looking into a marketing intelligence platform that can also not only help you from an attribution perspective, but also showcase which are those areas where your data may not be at the level of quality or cleanliness that you need it to, and be able to make judgment calls and restitch it back together for you. So with that in mind, and as a wrap, one of the main takeaways that I hope to leave you all with today is that we ultimately need to rethink what we need attribution to do for us and show how initiatives ultimately drive revenue. Attribution is a long-term project and has some clear milestones. And as we start from ensuring our data is in alignment, refining our processes, defining our customer journey, and ensuring consistency across all our systems and processes. As we move forward, it is going to allow us to identify short-term wins. What are the insights and reports that can make a true impact on the way we're defining our marketing strategy and our efforts today, as well as our pipeline efforts. Because ultimately, I'd like to view marketing as being a strategic engine, almost the GPS of the company that not only tells you where you've been as a business, but more specifically where you're heading and what is next, and very importantly, why we should be moving in that direction. And that can be achieved through measuring our effectiveness. And last but not least, as we're identifying those short-term wins, we continue bettering ourselves in this journey. It's also important to keep in mind that we need to iterate and improve as we progress, and not let perfect be the enemy of good, so we can continue influencing that business transformation. Attribution at the end of the day can solve so many challenges. It helps you make better informed decisions, maximize your marketing strategies for long-term success. And it also allows you to provide actionable insights in order to lead to a more positive improvement in engagement and revenue. But it's important to also keep in mind, as you're showing that data, to not let the data talk. Speak for you or the dashboard itself, and truly use what your system and measurement provides in order to drive those insights and be able to make some strategic recommendations. So that way, as you ultimately champion your wins in terms of your marketing campaigns, it's ultimately going to be because you understand what to do as well as what not to do with the data and the reports to back that up. Attribution done well and with all the other steps in place can help you be the hero of your organization and turn ultimately that data into a dialogue, your reviews more into roadmaps for success, in order to help your business move forward with a lot less chaos and a lot more clarity. Because when you can finally connect these dots, you end up not just telling a story, you're driving where your organization should be ultimately focusing next. And I believe that's the end of my presentation. So, thank you.